We are very proud to have Nancy with us today. She herself has Parkinson's disease, and she has devoted her time to helping others understand and cope with the disease. I'm sorry, y'all. She is an accomplished watercolorist, and she devotes her time and art to benefit local and also regional Parkinson's organizations. Ms. Grandoff.
Thank you for the introduction. I'm Nancy Grandoff, and I'm actually the muted gene. Now I'll explain that. It is a genetic disease, and it is handed down and can skip generations. By the time that it got to me, it was muted. In other words, it was not as strong as it was when it first started out, probably centuries ago. Parkinson's has never been given much attention, like in the media, in newspapers or magazines, until recently. It was just one of those things that was on the back burner that nobody knew much about, even 50 years ago. I myself have had Parkinson's for 28 years. I've lived with it, and I've been through all of the stages that medically they know anything about. In front of you there is a little bookmarker, and it is, I took yours. Anyhow, it is listing the symptoms that are most commonly known. And if you read through carefully, they also fit the description of other things, other medical problems. But if you or you know anyone that has these symptoms on a regular basis, please advise them to be checked by their doctor. The earlier that they get to Parkinson's, the better that they have a way of living much longer and an easier life. I was diagnosed in Tampa, Florida by Dr. Robert A. Hauser, who is a researcher and a neurologist specializing in Parkinson's, a researcher, and has written many books on Parkinson's. And he asked me at that time to help set up a support group. There wasn't a support group, and as I said, Parkinson's wasn't really in the forerunner. I didn't know how to go about setting up a support group. I really wasn't even sure what it meant. But I got down and said, okay, I can do this. I had a person that was involved. She did not have Parkinson's, but she was involved in doing volunteer work. And she helped me, and we got it set up. And it turns out that it was a very good thing. The very day that I held my first Parkinson's awareness support meeting was the day that Michael J. Fox announced that he had been diagnosed 7 years earlier with Parkinson's. So it was a memorial kind of thing for me, very memorable in that Michael J. Fox made my support group really a big hit that day. we talked about Michael J. Fox and his career and how much he was giving up to have to deal with Parkinson's. It is a brain disorder, and it really is there are no two patients alike. Their symptoms may be similar, but they're never alike. And things that they go through while having the Parkinson's are different. Mine was noticed by my husband, and he kept telling me, he said, you have a tremor. Well, I knew I had a tremor, but it didn't bother me. But it bothered him. And that's how he got me to Dr. Hauser. And Dr. Hauser is also on the staff of the University of South Florida Medical School in Tampa. Dr. Hauser, really, I didn't understand the diagnosis. To me, I thought it was like very simplified. But to a trained neurologist, they know what they're looking for, certain things. For instance, he, tested my muscle like this on the hand. And then, the same with this. Touch your little pinkies together, that kind of thing. And I kept thinking, what kind of diagnosis is this? It was just strange because I didn't know anything about Parkinson. Anyhow, he gave me a bunch of prescriptions. And very frankly, at the drugstore, I stood there and I thought, what am I doing here with these prescriptions? I didn't feel sick. I didn't feel sick. That's important because it is a muscular, it attacks the muscle and the cells in the brain and the body. And that wasn't happening to me at that particular time. All right, I picked up the prescriptions and I kept thinking, okay, I've got to take them. They have been with me for 28 years, added on with other things that support the original. I'm not going to get into the medication because I think doctors are best advice for anyone. I am often asked what I take, and they call it the Gold Road, and it's called carbidopa levodopa. And I think that probably is something that every neurologist prescribes to their patient from the very beginning. I couldn't tell that it was making a difference with me. But as I went along, I was at a level, because if you have seen anyone that tremors with Parkinson, a number of you have seen me tremor with my Parkinson's. It is not pleasant because it really racks and moves the entire body, and it interferes with everything. I'm to the point now that I may have 4 or 5 good hours per day that I can paint or work on anything else that where the tremor won't interfere with me. In the beginning, I was good, and actually, my real trouble began 5 years ago. It was pretty smooth up until then. Not much could be said. It was just I'd taken the medication and I was okay. About 5 years ago, I had to have surgery for a hernia, and it turned out that the Parkinson's interfered with the operation, the first operation that I had for that. Because of the Parkinson's effect on the lungs and the breathing, it really turned out that gave me an additional thing that I had to worry about. But along with that came hallucinations. And the medical community has decided to change that into another category. And it is now referred to as PDP. And I'm not sure that I'm saying the psycho, let's see, I forgot where I put that now. Anyhow, it is psychosis, Parkinson's disease psychosis. I thought that psychosis was a pretty harsh name to give to hallucinations that Parkinson's patients have. I have interviewed several people that have had the hallucinations. I myself have had the hallucinations, and I'm going to explain that in just a little bit so that you'll know the difference between hallucinations and dreams. Everybody refers to them as dreams. The medical community, in putting it in the name of psychosis, covers almost every type of thing that goes through the brain that would result in a dream. The first one that I had was very strange. It was like a childhood friend that we grew up together. And I named him Ace One Eye, ACE, like a card that you play. Ace One Eye. And he was like a playing card. He had an A in the left-hand corner, and you came down the right side, and he had 3 dents like he had been in a fight. Ace was the leader, and he had 51 cards that followed him. Ace would come up, always greeting me, "Hiya, Nance." And I found myself responding to Ace, and I said, "Hi, Ace," and we talked. That's the danger of hallucinations. You can be drawn in. And it was easy to talk with Ace. He would fly by, and his 51 cards would follow him. I didn't know that I was hallucinating. And of course, the doctors warn, they don't inform their patients well enough about hallucinations. And that's one of the things that I stressed in the support group, because families are usually not prepared for what is coming up with Parkinson's. So Ace would fly on off, and then he would just drop in at any time. And it was always "Hiya, Nance." And the only other time that he said something that drew me back, really back to reality, was that he flew over my house, and I was out in the yard, and he said, "Hiya, Nance, I can't stay. I just wanted to see how you are. I have to be in Paris in an hour." Well, logically, we all know we cannot get to Paris in 1 hour on an airplane from the United States. That drew me back into reality, looking at what I was dreaming. And I had many other dreams. And I'm going to demonstrate the difference. The year is 1789. And I am flown in a vehicle that I don't know anything about to Paris, France. I live in a pensione on a square, and I'm a hawker. A hawker is one that puts their wares on a cart and sells them. And I had a particular spot that was reserved for me next to a bakery and a pastry shop. And needless to say, in Paris, at that time, the month was February, and it was very cold. The pastry shop lent some heat to me sitting out in the square ready to sell my wares. I made candles, and I sold them to the rich people that came and were sightseeing, the tourists and the businessmen. I got up early every morning, and I pushed my cart into the square and into my cubicle that I had. One day, I looked across the street and I saw a young man walking, pacing in front of Notre Dame. And there was something familiar about this young man. And I could see he was very troubled. But then I had a patron that was ready to buy a candle, and I had to get so many sold for me to have an income. I sat down at my little cart after I had did the money exchange for the person that bought the candle, and it was cold, very cold. I had a little lump of coal that I put on a little heater underneath my cart that kept my feet warm. The aroma from the bakery was making me very hungry, but the weather was deteriorating. I knew that there would not be any more business that day, so I decided that I would go back to my pensione and wait the weather out. I was troubled as I walked about the young man that I saw pacing. I couldn't do anything that day, but I wanted to see if he was in the neighborhood. The next morning was very much like the day before. I got dressed and I pushed my cart to my spot. I lit my little heater and I put a little teapot to have a spot of tea before the day began. The businesses soon were opening the doors with their chains and the noise. And I sat. I didn't have a customer. People came and went. People came and went, but I didn't have a customer. Around noon, I looked across at Notre Dame again, and I thought that I saw the young man. Instead, it was Charlie, one of the local guys that had his coal scuttle, and he was going to deliver coal to his patron. He stopped and he, "Bonjour, mademoiselle," and he gave me a beautiful lump of coal. It was big, and it would last all night in my pensione. Charlie walked on, and I kept looking. Suddenly, the young man appeared, and he paced, and he was very troubled. He suddenly lifted his head and looked across the street at me, and he started across the street. I was absolutely shocked when he came close to me. He was a total me. It was me there. I didn't know what to say to him because I could see that he was surprised that he was looking at a mirror image of himself. We didn't talk as we talk now. They were thought processes, and that was even more frightening. He had problems. His wife had died. He had 3 children, and he had lost his job. He had 3 children that were hungry and sick. He walked into the bakery, and he picked up 3 loaves of bread and a sausage, and he took off out the door. The baker came raging out, "Stop, thief, stop that man." I walked up to the baker and I took the little coins that I had in my apron out and I gave them to the baker to help pay for what he took. The next day, people had gathered meanwhile, and the next day, the baker turned out that he was a hero. He had in the newspaper, "Baker gives away bread to feed hungry children." So the baker benefited. But because that was me stealing the loaves, I had broken God's commandment, "Thou shalt not steal." I woke up and I was back in my home. Now the difference here is that it was this nice, pleasant, high-end dance to me stealing to feed hungry children, sick children. And then from there, my hallucinations went even further into the psyche, into religious beliefs, and actually to the point that at my home I kept thinking that I heard noises and I was calling the police to come and check. Fortunately, my doctor did not do this, but fortunately one of the young police officers on the force had served in Vietnam and he had seen many cases of hallucinations. And he sat me down. He says, "Mrs. Grandoff, I cannot see what's going on in your mind, in your head, but we do not have the staff that can check on your house as much as you're calling." And again, this hit home again because I hadn't realized. Hallucinations are the dangerous part of Parkinson's. Very, very much so. It was easy to deal with it, really. And that young officer really made me realize it by asking one question, really. He said, "How do you get into your house when you get home?" And I told him, I said, "I open the door and I come in." He said, the images that you're having, how do they get into your house?" And I thought about it for a moment. Well, they fly in the walls. They don't open doors. They just fly in, regardless of what image it was. So it was time for me to talk to my doctor about that. I found that the two doctors now that I had, neurologists, were not as up to date as I thought they should be, and they weren't. And they don't let the patient know about these things in advance. And maybe in a way it's a good thing because I'm not sure that anybody could take knowing that they're going to have hallucinations that can really hurt them in the long run. I was strong enough mentally that I could pull back. Had I not been strong enough, I don't know what would have happened, but I can imagine what would. Parkinson's has so many stages. They're like layers. And sometimes I feel like I'm two people. And I'm Nancy, and then other times I feel like I'm another Nancy that's sick. And I haven't merged the two. But this I have now because it's hit another stage that it's attacking the muscles. And, excuse me again. And the muscles start with me from the ankles, and they work their way up to every place. And it actually caused the fracture in my spine. It has worked its way up to my heart, and the constriction is so tight that I can hardly breathe. And I had an episode when I first came here of what I'm talking about, and it was scary. It was the first episode that I had really had that scared me. The nurse, the late night nurse, came in and she says, "There's nothing wrong with you." Meanwhile, I had frozen into a position with my legs in a funny position. My arms were not. That's the strange thing about it. My arms were not, but my body from the neck down was frozen into a position that I could not move out of. And if you have ever seen anyone have a Parkinson episode, this is called the late stages of Parkinson's. And it is scary. I mean, it really is very scary. It resembles a statue almost that's just there. There is a condition called St. Vitus dance. And it's somewhat like that, but it really mocks stroke. The left side of the face distorts. Drooling happens. And until it wears out, you are frozen in this position. You can't separate the legs to lay them down flat. And I have this at this point almost every night. It has happened to me once during daytime only, but it's at night. They cannot begin to do the correlation why it's at night more than it would be daytime. And I think the important thing about that, to avoid it, the medication that I take must be taken on time as the doctor has prescribed it. If it comes to you late, you're going to have this episode all the way through to the end of it. It sometimes lasts a half hour, and it's lasted as much as 6 hours. If you can imagine being frozen, your limbs frozen, and not being able to move your body, only the hands and your head. Well, not even your head, because it turns to the left and the muscles are stretched here in the neck. The nurse that was on duty told me that nothing was wrong with me. And I asked for my medication. I wasn't given the medication because I was told it was not due until 6 a.m. And this was now like probably 3 a.m. And I asked for it again. So this is the thing that patients should have their doctors to let them have the medication when it's needed too. But most patients cannot make that decision for themselves. They do need someone that can make the decision and dispense the medication appropriately. Fortunately, I do have that most of the time. At 6 a.m., there was a knock on the door, and it was the night nurse, and she said, "I have your medications. You have to come to the door for them." And I said to her, you know that I cannot get up, I cannot walk. Now, and then I really just got nasty. I just said, bring the medications to me, damn it. And I mean, it was not nice to say that, but I did. And it was at that point, I was so wrapped out that I needed to ask for it. The medications, if they're dispensed on time, usually will avoid any of that. Probably the most important thing about Parkinson's medications is the patient needs to take it on time and have it available on time. That has been stressed to me by the neurologists that I have used myself and other neurologists that I have talked to, that most patients forget to take their medication. If they're in a situation like this, you know, that a living situation, it may be late and they cannot avoid having this Parkinson's episode. Parkinson's is one thing that everybody needs to inform their family about if they have it. Bring your children. It is hitting children now. I mean, it coming down, you know, through the years. There have been cases now of young children as early as 12. And I read about one recently that they thought the child was 10 years old. Whereas it was called Young Generation when Michael J. Fox was diagnosed. Excuse me again, I get dry. And the other thing that is really important for doctors to, and if you know anybody and you go with them to the doctor, find out, get an estimate of what all of this is going to cost. To date, my Parkinson's has probably cost about $3.5 million to keep me here. And there is definitely a way that somehow I'm not going to be able to do it, but somehow someone in the future needs to do something about the cost of the drugs. One of the newest things that they have out is the Inbrija inhaler. And I was given a grant to try it. And the medication for 1 week, the first week, was $1,844 1 week. Now, it's not a cure. There is no cure for Parkinson's. Not yet. Michael J. Fox has set up his foundation. In his foundation, he has available for researchers $800 million to do research for Parkinson's. I'm scooting off my cushion. Anyhow, there has not been a medication that will take it away. There are many things available, but they're not the best solutions for most people. I was asked to do the DBS, deep brain stimulation, where they go into the brain 4 different places and put the electrodes to help ignite the action of the brain to releasing the carbidopa naturally in your body. the levodopa doesn't stay in the body very long, but we manufacture the carbidopa automatically. It gives out, or it's low, or if you're perfectly okay, that means you know that your levels are very good and you won't have to worry about it. But it was not for me to do the brain stimulator. I could not do it. It probably would have given me relief along the way, but I could not do it. It was just something that I couldn't do. At that point, I had interviewed a bunch of people that had had the stimulator, and they were happy with it in the beginning. It calmed all of the tremors. They didn't have any of the symptoms here, and they were very happy. But then they began to see a slurred speech and different things happening, and that told me that I made the right decision. I may be paying for it with the nightly episodes, but I made the right decision then. So I'm here today, and thanks to good medical care that I have had. And I think that it's important for everyone to know the symptoms with Parkinson's. They're so similar to so many other diseases that we have. But if you know anybody, please have them to get to a neurologist that specializes in Parkinson's. There's a huge difference. And because the one that specializes in Parkinson's is going to be the one that is going to be able to help that person have a longer and easier time with it. So I think that we're going to try to have a little question and answer series, and if I can answer it, I'll be glad to. If I can't, I'll let you know that I can't. I'm an expert on me and what it's done to me, but I am not an expert on someone else's Parkinson's. So, would anybody have a question?
Are you still able to do art and paint?
Not like I used to. I did set aside 4 hours per day when I had my gallery, and I painted and taught classes and promoted a lot of local artists, and I would paint paintings that were often sold at silent auctions to benefit the Parkinsons. And there are many articles that have been written up in the papers about that. The big one that I have, and it's the biggest that I have ever been involved in, was the first meeting of the international researchers. They came from, neurologists came from every place. I was the chairman of the group that put it together through the National Parkinson's Association in New York. Since I'm an artist, I decided, I guess I didn't give them a chance to help me decide, I decided it, to have the theme art. And what we did, we sent out flyers to neurologists that had sent in their names, and they get a list. And we wanted art from all over the world to be the theme, but they had to be under that neurologist's care. I mean, they had to have Parkinson's, and they had to be under the neurologist, his or her care. Some of the art was absolutely fantastic. It was beautiful. And I was so surprised at so much of it. But we could only hang 65 paintings, and it hung in the National Art, let's see, I'm gonna try to turn around. I think there is something, maybe not. Oh, Playful Turtles. That was my entry into, and it hung in the Washington National Museum for all of that weekend. The meeting was held in April the 6th through the 10th, I think, of 2006. I'm not sure about that date. I'd have to look it up again. But anyhow, the art we hung, and it was exhibited all weekend, and then it was auctioned off to raise money for Parkinson's research. It was really quite something to see the art from every place. People that have the same problem that I have, and how they could paint. And we asked them to put a little paragraph, the best they could, how they found being able to get around any of the things that were crippling to them. That was really quite an honor that I was given, because it was international, and the original of Playful Turtles hangs someplace in London. I don't know who bought it, but they were all auctioned off, and from what I understood, it really made a nice grant for a young man, I think, from Harvard got the grant. I don't recall all of the details now, but it was quite an honor to be there and to do. I have actually donated, I think up until about 5 years ago, I haven't been able to donate my artwork to different groups, because I haven't been able to paint like I did. And so I think that phase of me is kind of over. However, I have a book in the making, and I've got to get to work on it. I had meant to have a sketch of Ace One Eye to show you all what he looked like, and I just didn't get to do it. But the thing that I think that is so important is really, if you have anything to do with anybody that has Parkinson's, just make sure that their medication is given on time and as the doctor prescribed. I think that's the message that I would want anyone in the medical community to know. To me, it's the most important. Thank you. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Nancy.
I hope that my experiences have maybe helped you all also to understand hallucinations, and because they are very dangerous. I had no idea that it just didn't occur to me. It was so natural to talk to Ace One Eye, and it really can draw you in, and psychologically it would be very hard for a doctor to pull you out. And I know that I've talked to my doctor about that. The thing that they tell you in the beginning, if you have any changes, to please contact the office and, make an appointment. And the warnings are also on the medication, that it may cause hallucinations. And unlike everybody else, I probably didn't pay very much attention to it. And I don't know of anybody really that really stops and reads all of that, the warnings and the warning signs, but it certainly is a good practice to do so. I think that if I were not here and, my medication is there for, in this type setting, I think that knowing what I know now, I would read even aspirin has that warning, and I think I would read it each and every time. But it really is something I don't have any answers for. The symptoms are there. People don't recognize them. I didn't. I mean, the tremor in the beginning didn't bother me. It was bothering my husband. And, but it didn't bother me. It would have, and thank goodness that he was on to me to get to a doctor, to find out what it was. But I'm hoping that none of you ever have to go through what I have gone through with the Parkinson's. It really is not easy to deal with, and it isn't easy to deal with. The medication, if you have an episode, it changes your entire way of doing, I think, because I've said a couple of things that I've had to apologize for later, but the medication causes one to be different than what they normally are. But I hope that you won't have to ever deal with anyone, but if you do, try to just make them comfortable. I don't think that there's really an answer for. I think that there more can be done in the nursing part, though. Now that I do. I think that there is a way of maybe helping the patient to relax where the muscles would not tighten up as much. The answer is not walking away and leaving the person on the bed, I can tell you that. But it really, I don't know what it would be. I've thought about it when I'm in one of those Parkinson's episodes. I've thought about how could someone walk in and help me. And I think that mostly it would be trying to make the muscles relax. I think that would be a start. I haven't had that except twice by the same med tech that rotates, and anyhow, it's a start. I don't know where else it could go. And I don't know what lies ahead. And actually, the doctors at this point don't know what lies ahead for me either. They know up to now what they've got. I happen to be one of about a dozen or less of people that have lived with Parkinson's for 28 years. Most patients, once that they're diagnosed, live a maximum of about 17 years. And at that point, as I was told also, that when I came in to be diagnosed, I had already had Parkinson's for about 4 years. So in all reality, that means that I've had Parkinson's for 32 years. And there must be something there that it's hidden for that first 4 years that it's just not realized. I'm not sure that I understand that exactly, because it seems that the doctors would kind of know, but they don't. And I think that I'm one of those few people that are being tested on what's coming next, because they don't know. And I mean, it's really kind of strange that I'm telling my doctor what to do for me. I mean, that's really kind of a weird position to be in, but that's the position that I'm in, because I'm seeing what's happening to me and letting them know, and then they find a solution for it. So anyhow, thank you all for listening, and hope I shared some light for you.
And Nancy, you're an amazing lady.
Well, thank you.